Scarlatti spent the last 28 years of his life in Spain in the service of Maria Barbara, the Queen of Spain. The profound Spanish influence in his music is one of the defining aspects of his unique compositional identity. Thousands of subtle influences of a different people, a different culture, and a vastly different popular music were a powerful source of inspiration for Scarlatti's genius. Spain was definitely the catalyst for the emancipation of Scarlatti's genius. There is not a single example of any other piece that can compare with his keyboard sonatas from 1738 to 1757. The Spanish influence can be heard in the sounds Scarlatti uses to imitate the guitar and the folk instruments and the rhythms that suggest dance and flamenco style. This sonata in D major shows a strong Spanish influence. The piece begins in the style of a Spanish dance. The ornaments on the second main beat in measure 3 and measure 7 can be played from the principal note on the beat. Even the ornaments sound Spanish. The thirds of the opening become more expressive. Suddenly, we shift to A minor. Listen to how much color the grace notes bring to this passage. Here is what it sounds like without grace notes. Sounds Italian, right? Here is the same phrase with the grace notes. Now we hear the crying lament that sounds so typically Spanish. Following the Spanish lament, Scarlatti imitates the strumming of the guitar, and we hear percussive syncopations that sound like hand claps. But at measure 36, there's a surprise. The scale in the left hand from measure 18 in the beginning of the sonata becomes a contest of speed between the hands. We can imagine the swirl of the colorful skirts of the flamenco dancers. At the end of the section, we feel the exuberant energy of Scarlatti's signature repeated patterns. This sonata in D major is a psychological portrait of the inner soul of Spain. In this sonata, harsh dissonance alternates with passages of delicate beauty. This piece is one of Scarlatti's most vivid realizations of the duality of the Spanish temperament. This sonata is one of Scarlatti's most mature works, and the music is challenging to interpret. The piece has no specific tempo indication. Scarlatti marks cantabile, which is his word for a free and expressive tempo rubato. The slurs marked by Scarlatti tell us that the scale gestures should sound spontaneous and improvisatory. These lovely gestures are followed by a stately and refined dotted note rhythm. But later in the piece, the genius Scarlatti takes the dotted note rhythm and transforms it into the drumbeat of a strange march. The same rhythm becomes a tortured and barbaric inquisition of sound with crushing and painful polychords in the bass. But the mood suddenly changes back to the graceful character of the beginning. This sonata in A major is a wonderful romp through Spain. The piece starts with two-voice imitation between the hands that Scarlatti often uses at the beginning of the sonatas. The syncopated single notes and octaves shifted off the beat create a brilliant Scarlatti effect. We close the exposition with a dance and end on the dominant E. But without any modulation, the development section begins in C major. The repeated chords in the left hand descend in structural thirds. Now the music becomes more violent, more powerful and aggressive, with dissonant seven-note crush chords. This music really sounds Spanish. Are we at a bullfight? Here is Scarlatti's version of the heroic fanfare that announces the arrival of the matador. Following this bullfight music, Scarlatti composes a brilliant one-measure transition that changes mode from minor to major and magically brings back the opening music. But now the left-hand chords from the beginning of the development return. Here the right hand plays an insistent figure that seems to be taunting the bull. This music is almost a second development section. The recapitulation stays in A minor as long as possible. Are we misdirecting the hapless bull? Scarlatti prolongs our suspense as long as possible with a few passes in A minor before he cleverly pivots back into A major. In many of Scarlatti's sonatas, we feel the energy, the life, and the spirit of Spain. Scarlatti used the Spanish dances and the sounds of Spanish instruments to create a new, brilliant, and expressive music that no one had ever heard before. In Spain, Scarlatti reinvented keyboard music. It is amazing to think Scarlatti was already in his 60s when he composed many of these sonatas. During the last several years of his life, Scarlatti had an outpouring of genius, producing hundreds of his greatest works. This late and brilliant creative surge is unique among the great keyboard composers. Many explanations have been offered for this surge of creativity, but the most obvious has never been mentioned. In his mid-50s, Scarlatti married for the second time. His wife, Anastasia, was a Spanish woman, and he began a second family with her. With this marriage, Scarlatti's cultural transformation was complete. Domenico Scarlatti was now a Spanish composer. He signed his name Domingo Scarlatti. Scarlatti's lust for life was definitely undiminished. The last of Scarlatti's 9 children was born in 1749 when Scarlatti was in his mid-60s. You go, Domingo.